afternoon. Thanks for tuning in to Times Now. I'm Kritsween Walia.
A very good afternoon and welcome. My name is Agnipath Recruitment. Top of the hour, let's get you the update because this is something that is making India proud, especially the youth. Because this is the Agnipath fury that fires have already been forgotten, especially when the country was laid to siege with those protests and violent clashes now that had been reported. Now it is the time we are looking at a lot of recruitment that seems to be happening, which is surpassing the previous year's numbers, as many of those young men are showing up to be a part of India's defense forces.
Now remember, we're going to break down details of the kind of responses that are coming in terms of this very recruitment rally. What is it that the youngsters of the country truly feel as they take this step forward, as they join the armed forces via the Agniveer rally? Here's what the response has been like, because remember, this was a point of contention. Several opposition parties had also raised questions on the very idea of the Agniveer scheme, calling it a bit far-fetched of a scheme wherein, the realities of India could perhaps not be brought together under this very scheme. But first up, the response is coming in.
किले सारे मर लिए, पानी में डूब लिए। ये आखिरी सजी भर्ती या देख लिया,
पूरी जान लगा देंगे इस बार।
और जी जान तो लानी पड़ेगी।
तैयारी तो अच्छी है जी, एनसीसी है, एग्जाम होगा नहीं अगर मेडिकल फिट हो गए तो। पिछली बार भी मेडिकल फिट थे, फिजिकल फिट थे।
दोस्त तो फुल है, कोई चक्कर कौन है।
Young men eager to serve the country on the borders, lining up for recruitment into the army through the new Agniveer scheme. Straining every muscle to make their dreams come true.
आज यहाँ एक रैली चल रही है, इसके साथ साथ हिंदुस्तान में 4 और रैलियाँ चल रही हैं, जो कि बेंगलोर, औरंगाबाद, वाइजैक और लुधियाना में हैं।
For many of them, it may be their only chance to get recruited, because for 2 years, recruitments had been frozen on account of COVID.
At the Hisar recruitment rally here, which caters to the youth of 4 states. So here you can see that the youth who have passed the running test of 1.6 kilometer early in the morning, they are now going through the physical measurement test. Here you can see the senior military officials are briefing the candidates who are aspiring to join the Indian Army under the flagship Agnipath scheme. Here they will be taken through to the various examination procedure by the military.
Agniveer, I would say it's just another attempt to use the young blood of India. If Agniveer is implemented correctly, Indian Army would be filled with young blood and they would be able to use technology wisely.
जी ये सपना आर्मी की वर्दी का तो जी हमारा बचपन का ही था, पर वैसे तैयारी करते हुए जी 2 साल हो गए हमें। ये स्कीम बहुत बढ़िया है जी। ये अग्निवीर को 4 साल का जी, कुछ दंगेबाज होते हैं जी, कुछ लोग हैं जो भड़का रहे हैं इनको, पर अग्निवीर बहुत बढ़िया स्कीम है।
This positive vibe is in stark contrast to the scenes witnessed 2 months ago when the Agniveer scheme was announced. Mobs of youngsters had taken to the streets and wreaked heavy losses, especially to railway property. This mindless violence wasn't as spontaneous as it may have seemed. Ultimately, the logic behind the change in the Army's recruitment policy has prevailed.
एक बार पिछली गेड़ रह गए थे फिजिकल में, अब की बार फिजिकल के लिए कर दिया। अब रिटर्न की तैयारी करेंगे, अब मेडिकल टेस्ट होएगा, अग्निवीर बनेंगे 4 साल के लिए।
सोच के तो नुए आए जी, 4 साल रहा फिर परमानेंट हो जाऊँ जी।
परमानेंट हो जाओगे?
विश्वास है जी।
इसका नोटिफिकेशन आते ही हम तैयारी में लग गए।
उम्मीद है निकल जाओगे?
निकल जाएंगे मैम, उम्मीद तो यही है।
The doubters tried and failed. The sons of the soil know better. They are choosing the Agniveer scheme to shape their futures.
you can see that the clear interest among the youth of Haryana, and this Hisar rally caters to 4 districts in Haryana. So this, as 22,000, more than 22,000 candidates registered their interest in joining Indian Army, it is certainly confirmed that the interest for joining Indian Army through the Agnipath scheme has not abated on the ground despite widespread criticism. With video journalist Gopal Dutt, Mayank for Times Network.
All right, so introducing also our guest joining us here on the broadcast, Colonel Dinny is with us. Good afternoon. And Colonel Utkarsh Rathore is also joining us here on the broadcast. Good afternoon to you, sir. Colonel Dinny, when it comes to the centre rolling out this recruitment scheme, there was a lot of opposition. We've seen that the violence that was also unleashed on the streets and different parts of the country, sir. But when it comes to reaching out to the people and making them understand it is for their benefit and how exactly they can be a part of the defence forces and be a proud Indian citizen, sir, do you believe the scheme is now turning out to be a success? Colonel Dinny.
Absolutely, ma'am. And let me put in perspective that I never had any doubt regarding the utility of the scheme, and primarily because I still believe that this is a scheme which is in the interest of the armed forces first, and second in the interest of the youth. And this was primarily a scheme for the human resource reforms within the armed forces, which was required for a very long time, and finally it has manifested. However, this entire, the trouble which we had when the scheme was announced was many veterans did express their concern, and many of them expressed their concern in the best of the interest, because they also want the army and the armed forces and the country to do well. That is why and the concerns were genuine. But they were, the whole thing took a political turn, and it went into in a thing that almost 250 crores worth of railways properties were damaged. And that was one thing in which people did not underestimated 3 things. One is that youth of India. The youth of India, they feel that, they don't have a mind of their own to think what is good for them and what is bad for them. The second thing is that they underestimate the desire of people to join the army and thereby serve the nation. That thing also is very, very much strong in India. And I come from Kerala, and I can see that happening here also. So that desire to serve the nation through the Indian Army or Indian Armed Forces was also underestimated. And third, of course, is the scheme itself. Like many of the youngsters whom you interviewed, they were very categorical saying that the scheme is a good scheme. It is a good scheme for them. They see the benefits in it. And last but not the least, I would also say that once the scheme is gone through, one full cycle of 4 years takes place, then probably the people who have done it on ground, they will be the people who will be able to give the correct feedback that what changes is required, if any. So at the start point itself, to criticize it and to kill the scheme in the manner in it was done, or the attempt to kill it was, I think was not very good. But then we have an India which is a democratic nation, so these things will come up. But at the end, I'm very happy that people, the youngsters, have seen through it, and they're coming in large numbers. And what I've got a feedback even here in like the place where I see daily people are out on the street practicing very hard to get through the thing, and they're all looking forward to the recruitment rally which is coming. I think it's a very positive thing, and hopefully we will see good people coming into the army. And as one of your people mentioned, that this will in turn result in a young and youthful army in the best interest of our nation.
Okay, Colonel Rathore, would you agree to what Colonel Dinny has said? Because, we're drawing a comparison of what really happened when the centre had first announced the Agniveer scheme, how politics ensued, and how unfortunate protests also broke out to an extent that the loss ran in thousands of crores. So that was extremely unfortunate, but the fact that these young men can be seen queue up outside these recruitment drives for the recruitment drives speaks volumes of how perhaps one jumped to the conclusions too soon back in the day.
See, Army Armed Forces is a very large organization, and which is time tested. It has seen wars and it has seen conflicts. All of a sudden, if you enforce a scheme in which 50% of the organization becomes contractual, it is but natural that it will be opposed and doubted by veterans and serving as well. Now, just seeing the candidates coming for the recruitment at the recruiting centers, or going by their numbers, how many have candidates have registered themselves, it does not mean that the scheme is a success. India has a large number of youth who are unemployed, and also there is a large number of youth who aspire to serve in the armed forces. It's a good sign. They would still be coming because you have made it 4 years. They still be coming because I was listening to the candidate, they say वर्दी पहनने का हमारा सपना है, and they would be coming there. But it does not mean that your scheme is good. You are somewhere playing or exploiting their sentiments because they want to join army and serve the motherland. Now coming to the entire scheme, my friend was saying that it's a very good sign, after 4-year cycle everything will happen. There are 3 stakeholders in this scheme. You have seen the candidates and the best one would be selected. Fine. Thereafter, what happens in the army? What happens in the Air Force and Navy? Sadly, nobody has been talking about that. We have been only talking Agniveer, after 4 years they would go to CAPF, they would get this much of money, they would be absorbed by corporate world, by the Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Home Affairs. This is no way of evaluating a scheme which is affecting such a large organization, in which you intend to turn half of the organization contractual.
Sure,
Unless
sir,
the Agniveers...
Absolutely, sir. Colonel Rathore, there are many of those shortcomings that are there, as you are also listing out those details. Sorry for interrupting you, but I also want to get a counter from Colonel Dinny on this. Because, Colonel Dinny, when it comes to the Agniveer scheme, the soldiers who will be recruited are for a short period of time. And multiple of them, few of them, rather, if we talk about, will be retained. But these will be the best of the lot. There have been certain concerns that have been raised by the youth, exactly what will happen with them after their training process is over.
What Colonel Rathore mentioned is quite a genuine kind of a concern which any veteran would have, and I completely understand the spirit behind which he is mentioning this. But what I would like to submit here is, sir, that 2-3 issues. One, what I've understood is that now the number of candidates over a period of time would be increased. So what will happen is that the aim is, for example, I can just, if you put it roughly, if there were 1,000 people and 100 people were going, the aim is to recruit 300, and then out of that 300, only 75 will be given the permanent, like after 4 years, they will be permanent. Now, your question is that what will happen to the people who become permanent? Nothing will happen, sir. After 4 years, like what the young soldier who's coming now, from the regimental centers to us, and he stays with us for 4 years and he continues. So the same manner, after 4 years, you have the best of the best. That is, first he has tested himself in the recruitment. Second, within the unit, and you are also an infantry officer, you know that within the unit, how he will be evaluated by the CO, by the Subedar Majors, by the JCOs, everybody for 4 years, and then he will be allowed to continue. And then he will continue with all his time-bound courses and other issues which will come through. So I don't think that is more of a functional issue. And secondly, I am of the firm belief, and I'm sure, sir, you will agree with me, that, sir, today also the armed forces have professionals in them, in the armed forces, who are very well capable of handling these issues. And I think, to say that how they will handle, I think we should leave it to the people who are serving. That's why I mentioned, let this go through, and the feedback of how it has been, how it has evolved itself can only be given by the people who actually go through it. The COs, the Jawans who are doing it, the JCOs, the higher commanders, all those people will be able to give the correct feedback. Of course, you and me can give our observations based on our experience. So my point is here is, let it go through. And as you mentioned, once an entire cycle has gone through, we will get the feedback. And also, again, underlining the fact, the people who are currently serving in the armed forces are extremely professional.
Dinny, you're proposing, let the first 4 years pass by. Let's see what happens to those who are retained, to those who perhaps have to look at other job avenues. And Also, let's not forget there is, the current global security trend that our armed forces are looking at, why we need to recruit more and more people into the armed forces. There's also a concern about the ballooning pension skills. All of that has also been considered while going ahead with this Agniveer scheme. But I'm going to have to leave it at that with the both of you. Thank you, gentlemen, for speaking to us and taking out your time.